The Wailing Princess, Sikandar Shah's second adventure. The Sheikhupura fort loomed over the horizon like a slumbering giant, its crumbling walls etched with the scars of centuries. The fort, built during the reign of the Mughal Emperor Jahangir, was once a sight of grandeur. But time and abandonment had stripped it of its former glory, leaving behind a labyrinth of weathered stone and darkened hallways. Local legend spoke of a sinister presence, the Wailing Princess, a tragic figure whose mournful cries pierced the stillness of the night, chilling the blood of anyone who dared to come near. It was said that she was betrayed by her own family, her life taken within the very walls of the fort. Some claimed they had seen her pale figure drifting through the halls, her eyes hollow with grief, her voice a siren call for vengeance. Few dared approach the fort after sunset, and those who did often returned with stories of cold whispers, shadowy figures, and the weight of unseen hands pressing on their shoulders. Sikandar Shah stood at the edge of the fort's massive stone gates, his talwar strapped to his back and his satchel heavy with charms and tools. A merchant's caravan passing by had spoken of a night watchman who had disappeared days ago, his lantern found smashed near the fort's entrance. The villagers feared the princess's wrath, but Sikandar suspected there was more to the tale. The setting sun bathed the fort in hues of crimson and gold as Sikandar stepped through the gates. The weight of history surrounded him. The air was thick, the kind of silence that carried centuries of untold stories. He could feel the hum of energy in his talwar, the faint vibration that signaled the presence of the supernatural.
"This is no ordinary haunting,"
Sikandar muttered to himself, stepping into the darkened corridors. As Sikandar walked the halls of the fort, his thoughts turned to the princess's story, one he had heard as a child from his grandfather. The princess, Zohra, had been a young Mughal noblewoman, admired for her beauty and grace. Engaged to marry a powerful general, she had been filled with dreams of a bright future. But her jealous brother, fearing he would lose influence, orchestrated her murder, smothering her with her own veil in the fort's inner chamber. Her cries for justice had never ceased, and her spirit had haunted the fort ever since, trapped between life and death. He recalled the tales of travelers who had reported strange occurrences, sudden chills that froze the air, footsteps echoing through empty halls, and the sound of sobbing that grew louder, only to stop abruptly when one turned to look. One trader claimed he saw a pale figure vanish into the walls, but it was her wailing, high-pitched and anguished, that sent shivers down the spines of all who heard it. As Sikandar moved deeper into the fort, the air grew colder. The once faint wails became louder, echoing off the stone walls. The sound seemed to come from every direction, disorienting him. His talwar glowed faintly at his side, its magic a protective shield against the unseen forces lurking around him. Rounding a corner, Sikandar's lantern flickered and died, plunging him into darkness. A soft, icy breath grazed his neck, and a whisper followed.
"Why do you come here?"
"I seek the truth."
The wailing ceased. The silence that followed was deafening, but Sikandar pressed on, his instincts guiding him. Eventually he reached a grand hall whose walls were lined with faded tapestries. At the center of the room stood a crumbling pedestal, and above it hung a large dust-covered portrait. Sikandar wiped away the grime to reveal the face of the princess, her eyes filled with sadness, her lips frozen in a faint, mournful smile. It was then that Sikandar noticed a trail of faint red stains on the floor. Blood. The trail led to a small, hidden door partially concealed by a collapsed pillar. Pushing it open, he entered a forgotten chamber. The air inside was suffocating, and the room smelled of decay. At the center was an ornate wooden chest, its lid slightly ajar. Inside, Sikandar found a blood-stained journal, its pages fragile but legible. The journal told Zohra's story in painful detail. It spoke of her excitement for her wedding, her growing suspicions of her brother, and finally, her betrayal on the night of her engagement. Her last entry read,
"If my voice reaches the heavens, let justice be done. Let my soul find peace.
Sikandar closed the journal, his heart heavy. The princess had been denied justice for centuries, and her cries for vengeance had turned her spirit restless. But as he turned to leave, a shadow moved across the room. A figure emerged from the darkness, a tall, imposing silhouette. Sikandar felt the temperature drop further as the apparition took form. It was a man in Mughal robes, his face twisted into a sneer. The brother. His spirit had been bound here as well, trapped by his own guilt and rage.
You cannot free her.
She's mine to control. She will wail for eternity. Sikandar stepped forward, his talwar blazing with energy.
You bound her to this place with your betrayal. Her suffering ends tonight.
The spirit lunged towards him, its form a blur of shadow and malice. Sikandar dodged it, the talwar slicing through the air. The blade's magic cut through the apparition, but it reformed instantly, its laughter echoing through the chamber. The fight was unlike anything Sikandar had faced before. Realizing brute force wouldn't work, Sikandar reached for the blood-stained journal. Holding it aloft, he began reciting a prayer for the dead, a ritual his grandfather had taught him to sever the bonds of hatred and guilt. The brother's spirit screamed, clawing at the air as the words grew louder, filling the chamber with light. The apparition flickered, its form dissolving into smoke. The room fell silent. As the light faded, Sikandar felt a soft, warm presence behind him. Turning, he saw Zora's spirit, her face serene and her eyes filled with gratitude.
Thank you.
She whispered, her voice no longer a wail but a gentle breeze. Her form faded into the light, leaving behind a sense of peace that filled the room. As dawn broke over Sheikhupura, Sikandar emerged from the fort, the journal tucked safely in his satchel. The villagers greeted him with cautious hope, and when he told them the wailing had ceased, their relief was palpable.
She is at peace now, and her story will not be forgotten.
As he walked away from the fort, the light of the rising sun glinting off his talwar, Sikandar felt a renewed sense of purpose. The echoes of Zora's tale reminded him why he did what he did, to give voice to the forgotten, to restore balance where it was broken, and to ensure the stories of the past endured. But deep within, he knew his journey was only beginning. More voices called out to him from the shadows of history, waiting for someone brave enough to listen.